The entire house seemed to have fallen into ruin. The lower floors were flooded, the walls were peeling with plaster, and the structure appeared to be unstable, with signs of rust spreading throughout. Papers, books, and all kinds of debris were scattered across the floor, as if no one had taken care of or lived there for a long time. When the search warrant for Rick Harrison's house was issued, people initially thought it was just a routine financial investigation, a standard check into the shop's activities and possibly questionable transactions. But everything changed when the FBI entered the mansion's basement. No one could have imagined that behind the heavy door and the newly sealed layer of bricks was a dark secret no one had ever dared to think about. When the door was broken open, they discovered a dead body, and that was just the beginning. At that moment, the investigators realized they weren't just searching a house. They were opening the gates to a real hell, where terrifying secrets were waiting to be exposed. If you find this story intriguing and want to follow more shocking, mysterious, real-world situations, don't forget to hit like, share this video so your friends can discover these hidden truths. Leave a comment below and share your thoughts on this case. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any stories. Now, let's dive into the story together. Through multiple bricks, the FBI uncovered several bodies scattered throughout the basement. The stench was so overwhelming that many agents had to hold their breath. But as they began the identification process, the full truth came to light. The story immediately became the focus of international media, not just because of its horrifying nature, but because the central figure was a famous personality once praised as a model of perseverance and sharp business acumen. What could transform a beloved media figure into the center of one of the most serious criminal cases in U.S. history? The answer is far from simple. Behind the incident was an underground network and a dark past that Rick Harrison had cleverly hidden for years behind a perfect facade. The FBI's initial investigation did not begin with a gunshot or a shocking accusation, but with a discrepancy in the balance sheet. In early 2022, during a routine audit conducted jointly by the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, and the FBI, Rick Harrison's gold and silver pawn shop was flagged as a business potentially involved in tax fraud. The discrepancies were minor but frequent, mainly concerning cash transactions and goods of unclear origin. This drew the attention of investigators. At first, agents assumed it was just another ordinary tax evasion case, one of hundreds involving small and mid-sized businesses in Nevada exploiting legal loopholes. But Rick Harrison was no ordinary businessman. He was the face of the antique industry in America, a national TV star with millions of fans. His shop had been featured on television hundreds of times, renowned for its strange, rare, and highly negotiable items. This made the lack of transparency in his financial records even more unacceptable. If someone hailed as a symbol of business integrity was playing a hidden game, it suggested something far more serious might be lurking beneath the surface. A special FBI unit in Las Vegas was assigned to closely monitor the store's financial activities, and they soon uncovered a series of suspicious transactions. Numerous cash payments between $15,000 and $50,000 had no accompanying invoices. Rare items such as ancient Buddha statues, 13th-century Chinese ceramics, and Egyptian artifacts were purchased with no clear documentation. Alarmingly, some items matched lists of artifacts stolen from museums in Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. One particular detail elevated Rick Harrison's case to high-risk status. His name appeared repeatedly in Interpol's internal alert system. 3 artifacts previously found at his store before being auctioned in Los Angeles were listed as stolen in armed robberies in Syria and Jordan. According to an internal FBI report, those items had disappeared from conflict zones just months before turning up in Las Vegas. As investigators began analyzing banking data tied to Rick's business, they uncovered a complex web of transactions. Money from the sale of artifacts had been moved through multiple layers of accounts, most registered to shell companies in Belize, Cyprus, and the British Virgin Islands, before ultimately returning to the U.S. as personal investment accounts. In less than 2 years, the amount repatriated was estimated to exceed $4.7 million. This development shifted the FBI's perspective. They no longer viewed this as a standalone financial fraud case, but rather as a potentially large-scale money laundering operation, with Rick Harrison at its center. Investigators began expanding their inquiry into the background of high-value clients who regularly visited the gold and silver shop. This led to a shocking discovery. At least 5 individuals who had engaged in high-value transactions with Rick had gone missing between 2017 and 2021. All these cases remain unsolved, and notably, none had ever been referenced in any of Rick's official records. While no direct evidence at the time linked Rick to these serious crimes, the sheer number of coincidences forced the FBI to place him under covert surveillance. Agents were assigned to monitor him around the clock for the next 6 months, focusing on his private residence, a sprawling 10,000-square-foot mansion on the western outskirts of Las Vegas, secured with a modern security system. Suspicions grew when the surveillance team observed numerous unusual deliveries to the estate during the night. Large, unmarked wooden crates were transported via unbranded trucks. Some delivery personnel had unclear backgrounds and had previously been investigated for involvement in the black market antiquities trade. Furthermore, the mansion contained at least 3 highly restricted areas not documented in original blueprints, a detail that could only be explained by the need to conceal something or avoid detection. A search warrant was granted on April 17, 2024. Rick Harrison's mansion was raided. What was discovered inside didn't just shock the investigative team. It sent tremors across the United States. No one could have anticipated that what began as minor financial discrepancies would open the door to a serial murder case accompanied by a slew of charges, from money laundering and antiquities smuggling to operating a global crime network. Most revelations shattered the carefully crafted public image of Rick Harrison. The charming antique mogul was unmasked as someone completely different beneath the surface. On one hand, he was a beloved TV personality with a charismatic smile and encyclopedic knowledge. On the other, he stood at the center of the most horrifying criminal case ever to emerge from the American reality television industry. Rick's mansion, the center of the mystery. Rick Harrison's estate sat in the affluent suburbs of West Las Vegas, once described by Lifestyle magazine as a haven for history enthusiasts. From the outside, it appeared completely normal. Over 2 acres of land, tall iron gates, a secluded perimeter with lush greenery, a large backyard pool, and a garage fit for 4 luxury vehicles. Everything radiated the understated elegance and refined taste of a TV millionaire. Discreet and enviably private. But behind that polished exterior was what FBI agents later described as a nightmare designed by an architect. Armed with a search warrant and backed by a forensic support team, the FBI raided the estate in the early morning of April 17, 2024. They expected to find documents, financial records, and perhaps some smuggled artifacts. But no one was mentally prepared for what awaited them behind the heavy, locked doors. The moment the investigators stepped inside, there was an undeniable sense of strangeness in the air. The interior, though luxurious, gave off a chilling feeling, not because of the temperature, but because of the atmosphere. The mansion emitted a strange, lifeless quality, as if no one had truly lived there. Some rooms were covered with heavy curtains, with no signs of habitation, giving the impression that it had been abandoned. Many areas showed signs of being sealed or locked in unusual ways, as if something was being carefully hidden. On the ground floor, police discovered several large wooden crates hidden in the wine cellar, a space accessible only to the property owner. These crates did not contain wine. Instead, they held rare artifacts, some wrapped in velvet and bearing symbols of museums from the Middle East, Asia, and North Africa. Most of these items lacked legal documentation. Many matched descriptions of stolen objects from armed robberies between 2016 and 2022. However, the real horror began when an agent accidentally discovered a hidden room concealed behind a false wall in Rick's private library. The small room had no windows, was eerily quiet, and completely sealed. Inside was a decomposing corpse wrapped in a tarp. The body had no identification, but an old watch found nearby was later confirmed to belong to a collector who had gone missing in 2019. This discovery triggered the FBI's special protocol, and the entire estate was locked down. Forensic teams were deployed at full strength, and the search warrant was expanded. Over the next 48 hours, 24 more bodies were exhumed. Some were hidden in basement storage areas, others buried beneath hollow wooden floors, and some placed in locations not included in the original architectural blueprints. This indicated Rick Harrison had made illegal structural modifications to conceal bodies. All corpses were in various stages of decomposition, some having been there for over 5 years. According to the forensic report, most of the victims were men aged 30 to 50. Some were identified as individuals who had been reported missing from neighboring states, while others couldn't be immediately identified due to missing fingerprints or soft tissue. What raised concern for investigators was the common thread among many of the victims. They had all been involved with the gold and silver pawn shop, or had engaged in illegal antiquities transactions with Rick. This pattern further fueled suspicions about the connection between the missing persons and Rick's criminal activities. These findings only made the link between the disappearances and Rick's illicit dealings more apparent. At the scene, investigators also uncovered hundreds of handwritten notes believed to be Rick's personal journals. These notes detailed his emotions, judgments, and intentions toward individuals he had dealt with in major transactions. Some entries were deeply disturbing. He knows too much. Can't be trusted. Must deal with him soon. High risk, but worth the gamble. These words led investigators to a grim conclusion. Rick Harrison wasn't just a businessman involved in crime, but likely a methodical and calculating serial killer. Another haunting discovery was the so-called secret gallery, a soundproof space deep within the basement, completely isolated from the main electrical system and accessible only via biometric lock. Inside, investigators found strange objects, photographs of victims, their personal belongings, IDs, and what appeared to be trophies collected after their disappearances. Some called it a distorted memorial, but to the FBI, it was undeniable evidence of a cyclical psychological pattern. a mechanism by which the killer preserved memory and power over each victim. When Rick Harrison was arrested, he showed no panic. According to one agent, he remained eerily calm, offering no resistance or explanation. He simply stood silently as police sealed off the home that had once symbolized his success. That unsettling calm only reinforced the theory that Rick's actions were deliberate and premeditated, that he knew exactly what he was doing and had hidden it for years, even from family and close friends. The case quickly became a nationwide phenomenon. The public was shocked to learn that a beloved television program and a man trusted by millions had lived a double life for over a decade. The media swarmed Las Vegas, with cameras and reporters crowding outside the estate, once a lavish retreat, now the crime scene of one of the most disturbing cases in reality TV history. If you find this story surprising and captivating, leave a comment with the number 1. If not, leave a comment with the number 0. Now let's continue the story together. Inside the mansion, every door opened revealed another layer of secrets. The deeper the investigators dug, the more they realized Rick Harrison had turned his home into a graveyard for deadly secrets. A place where his empire was built not just on knowledge and wealth, but blood and silence. What horrified the public was not just the number of victims, 25 in total, but the realization that Rick had lived among their remains as if they didn't exist, as if death itself was a component in the ruthless negotiations that shaped his decades-long career in the treacherous world of antique dealing. And so, the question remains, cutting into the collective psyche like a knife. How can one man maintain 2 lives? One man lives under the spotlight of television, while the other lurks in the cold shadows of calculated murder for nearly a decade, unnoticed by anyone? 3 individuals revealed the existence of an underground criminal network. When the search of Rick Harrison's estate concluded, investigators realized that what they had discovered was only the tip of the iceberg, and the submerged part could be far deeper and broader than they had ever imagined. The bodies discovered were not simply the result of the rampage of a lone madman or uncontrollable rage. Everything was too systematic, too quiet, too perfect. This led the FBI to a hypothesis that needed verification. Rick Harrison was not just a murderer, he was a key player in an organization, an international crime network where antiques were used as a cover and human lives were the price paid to protect the operation. Analysis of the electronic data retrieved from the estate, including hard drives, personal servers, and encrypted phones, revealed a closed communication system using anonymous platforms like EncroChat and Sky ECC. The FBI, in collaboration with Europol, decrypted the data and discovered hundreds of messages sent directly from Rick's devices. These messages contained unmistakable details, delivery locations, item codes, value symbols, and mysterious payment terms like black rice gold and blood formula, slang terms used in illegal antiquities deals. Among Rick's known contacts, at least 12 individuals were identified with criminal records related to artifact smuggling. These individuals were members of organized crime groups operating in Turkey, Iraq, Egypt, and the Balkans. Notably, 2 of them, known by the aliases Farouk and Sman, were on Interpol's Red Alert list. According to an internal report from 2020, these suspects were believed to have directed the theft of nearly 300 artifacts from the National Museum of Syria during the Civil War. The fact that Rick Harrison had been in direct contact with them to negotiate prices and arrange deliveries confirmed his central role in this network. Even more alarming, the FBI discovered that Rick did not just buy rare artifacts. He was directly involved in laundering these items, assessing their legal feasibility, and finding ways to legalize them before they were brought to market. In other words, Rick wasn't just a financial conduit. He was a professional advisor, making him an indispensable figure in the network. According to the FBI, the smuggling operation followed a triangular model. The supply was primarily sourced from unstable regions in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, distribution intermediaries in key centers across Europe, notably in France, Switzerland, and Belgium, and the final markets being primarily the US and China. Rick played the role of the gateway into the US, using his gold and silver pawn shop as a money laundering front for illegal artifacts. He imported these items into the US under the guise of a legitimate collection, then sold them through private auctions or quietly to ultra-wealthy collectors. From 2016 to 2023, Rick Harrison is estimated to have legalized at least 147 valuable artifacts, with total transactions exceeding $19 million. These items included a 6th-century Buddha statue stolen from northern India, an ancient lion sculpture from Armenia, 2 bronze wine vessels from the Zhou dynasty in China, and an almost intact replica of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which was believed to have been stolen from Luxor in 2011. These artifacts, under international law, were banned from commercial circulation. However, Rick's reputation as an expert allowed him to bypass the verification systems. The network operated entirely in secrecy, with transactions carried out through intermediaries. Payments originated through offshore companies in the Caribbean, and the items were accompanied by counterfeit documentation produced at workshops in Romania or Hong Kong. Those who dared to oppose or question Rick Harrison's activities simply vanished. Their bodies now lie among the 25 bodies found in the estate he built with the proceeds from his crimes. One notable case was that of Javier Montes, a Spanish collector who disappeared in Las Vegas in 2020 after meeting Rick. According to his wife, Javier had expressed concerns about the questionable origins of some artifacts Rick had gifted him. Shortly after, he disappeared without a trace. His remains were identified as one of the 25 victims found in Rick's mansion, confirmed through DNA analysis of his teeth. Another case involved Valerie Chen, a Canadian freelance journalist who had written articles criticizing how U.S. pawn shops exploited legal loopholes to traffic. Valerie had attempted to interview Rick but disappeared 4 months later in Nevada. The FBI confirmed that one of the female bodies found in Rick's mansion's basement matched her DNA. Cases like these painted a grim picture. Rick not only eliminated competition in business, but was willing to kill anyone who questioned the system he represented. In a journal retrieved during the search, Rick wrote, "To keep gold, you must bury those who mine it." The FBI investigation also revealed that Rick was not acting alone. He had accomplices, individuals who either knew or at least suspected part of the truth. Several prominent figures in the antique industry were summoned, including a renowned museum consultant in New York and an auction expert officially recruited by Sybiez. These individuals were suspected of helping to authenticate the origins of questionable artifacts. While no formal charges were filed against them, the list of suspects continued to grow. Part of the answer lies in Rick's personal reputation as a television personality. Rick built a natural media shield that not everyone can achieve. He appeared on TV as a man passionate about history, curious and composed. Viewers not only enjoyed the fascinating stories he told, but also trusted him as a reliable expert capable of analyzing and appraising rare artifacts. Rick hosted many talks, participated in exhibitions, and maintained good relationships with prestigious historical organizations, further solidifying his status in the public eye. Any doubts about him were quickly dismissed, as no one could imagine that someone like Rick, with all his prominence and credibility, could be involved in smuggling. Rick Harrison? A smuggler? No way, is what most people thought when they first heard the rumors. The other part lay in the nature of the antiquities trade. In this world, the boundary between legal and illegal is often blurred. Few items have perfectly traceable origins, and authenticity is often based more on the trustworthiness of individuals than objective documentation. Rick, in this case, was both a participant in the system and the one rewriting its rules. The revelation of this network turned Rick Harrison's case into more than a personal scandal. It opened a new chapter in the global battle against cultural smuggling, where criminals no longer wear masks but don suits, stand on TV stages, and smile while discussing the value of history. When the FBI released the first pieces of evidence, the American public was not only shocked by the discovery of 25 bodies, but also by a much larger, more unsettling question. How many people, how many artifacts, how many museums were truly part of a criminal network where Rick Harrison was merely the head of the dragon? People began to realize that what they had thought was just a man passionate about history and antiques was, in fact, the leader of a sophisticated criminal empire, with terrifying secrets hidden behind the seemingly trustworthy and humble persona of a TV star. This question not only shook public trust in the reality TV industry, but also raised doubts about the legitimacy of thousands of rare artifacts circulating on the market. Were the famous museums we once trusted truly cultural repositories, or were they simply laundering centers for dark dealings? Rick Harrison's double life on television. Rick Harrison was a beloved name. He had crafted the image of a smart, calm businessman who solved problems coolly and with extensive knowledge, from Roman coins to Civil War weapons. Rick introduced himself as a friendly scholar who not only appraised items but shared the historical stories behind them. This made him different from typical reality TV stars. People watched him not just for entertainment, but to learn something new. But when the FBI uncovered what lay inside Rick's mansion, the world had to ask, how could one man live such an extreme double life for over a decade? One side as a moral role model, the other as a serial killer? The answer didn't lie entirely in intelligence or acting skill, but something much deeper. Rick Harrison had lived a meticulously crafted life, designed to control everything around him, including how others perceived him. This was not just camouflage. It was a deliberate process of isolating himself into distinct personas, each operating with an exact personal record found within his mansion, carefully preserved. Journal entries in his desk drawer revealed a Rick Harrison entirely different from the public persona. In his writings, he spoke about the pressure of maintaining his media image, the suffocating feeling of fake admiration, and, particularly, about creating a private space where I can do whatever I want without permission from anyone. One chilling entry read, "Everyone has a secret museum. Some are full of memories, others full of failures. Mine is full of dead bodies. But at least they don't lie." This was not a confession, but a cold, calculated acknowledgement. Rick knew exactly who he was. He didn't deny the darkness within him, he had simply learned to hide it in a place where no one could suspect, right under the spotlight of fame. Criminal psychologists analyzing the case agreed that Rick Harrison didn't fit the profile of an uncontrolled or impulsive killer. Instead, he exhibited the traits of an organized killer, a highly intelligent person, skilled in manipulation and maintaining perfect routines as a cover. This explains how he could live, work, and regularly appear on television while just a few meters away from the bodies of those who had opposed or threatened the underground network he controlled. One prominent trait of such killers is an obsession with absolute power, not just in action, but also in thought. Rick didn't just smuggle artifacts. He wanted to control the entire operation, from sourcing, pricing, to the reputation of the sellers. If something was priceless, Rick had to be the one to define its value. This mindset directly influenced how he handled threats. Victims were not killed due to personal hatred, but because they disrupted the smooth operation of the system Rick had built. It was a flaw, and Rick handled flaws by quietly and unemotionally eliminating them, as if removing a faulty part from an assembly line. During the investigation, experts discovered that Rick kept many personal items from the victims: wristwatches, necklaces, even old plane tickets, hotel receipts, and family photos. These items were neatly organized in display cabinets in a secret room locked with a fingerprint lock, which only Rick could open. The FBI called this his crime memorabilia vault, and to Rick, when he jotted something down on paper, it was his real ledger. This is the real ledger. I don't count money. I count those unworthy of life. This obsession with collecting, though bizarre, revealed another darker layer of Rick's personality. He didn't just kill to cover up his crimes or eliminate obstacles. He killed to preserve memories. Just like he valued a rare Roman coin or an 18th century rifle, Rick treasured the lives he had taken as trophies in his underground world. This wasn't a form of honoring achievements. It was his way of marking his horrific conquests. This time, the prizes Rick collected were the extinguished lives of his victims. The divide between TV Rick and Dark Rick didn't stem from childhood trauma or personal tragedy. According to psychological reports requested by the FBI, Rick had a normal childhood, was not abused, and had no history of mental illness. However, since childhood, he had exhibited signs of an obsession with superiority. He enjoyed winning, proving others wrong, and especially hated being interrogated. High school teachers described him as a quiet, socially unremarkable child, but one who always wanted to be the only one with the right answers. Fame didn't shock Rick. It had become a tool throughout his 10 years on Pawn Stars. Rick never made major mistakes. He controlled the content, only appearing when everything was perfectly prepared, and steered clear of tabloid media. This showed he deeply understood the power of perception and used it as a shield against any doubt. His mastery in controlling his image is what shocked the public when the truth came to light. Rick was not a recluse or an unstable individual. He was the embodiment of reliability, and when people realized that even a symbol of trust could be a cold-blooded killer, it shook the foundation of societal security. Rick's audience primarily consisted of middle-class Americans who believed in individual effort and the dream of building wealth from nothing. They admired Rick because he was living proof of that dream. This case not only hurt them, but it also made them feel betrayed, as if Rick not only killed people but also destroyed their trust in the media and the image of success. This split, this duality, did not stop with Rick as an individual. It also reflected the nature of reality television itself, a world where everything can be built, polished, and edited to appear more real than the truth. And Rick understood this, using it to create a perfect version of himself that even he began to believe in. But on the other hand, the person the FBI discovered in his mansion was the real Rick. Not the artifact appraiser, but the appraiser of human lives and the price he set for them as evidence. The discovery of 25 bodies found in his mansion sometimes mirrored the deadly effects of media influence and public reactions. When the FBI officially disclosed the discovery of 25 bodies in Rick Harrison's mansion, the United States was shaken to its core. However, it wasn't just the large number of victims or the gruesome nature of the crimes that horrified the public, but what made everyone unable to believe it was the name attached to the case. A famous personality who had appeared regularly on television for over a decade was revealed to be one of the most cunning serial killers in reality TV history. The public's initial response focused on his family, particularly Corey Big Hose Harrison, Rick's biological son and longtime co-star on Pawn Stars. Corey was not only the heir by blood but also the direct successor of Rick's television legacy. The sudden allegations against his father, a serial killer, leader of an international antiquities smuggling network, and a man leading a double life in the family mansion, put Corey directly in the spotlight, under surveillance, and being personally investigated. The media immediately demanded answers. Did Corey know about Pawn Stars? Corey was described as a cheerful, sometimes naive person who always stood by his father through major deals in a show that lasted over a decade and aired over 500 episodes. Many found it hard to believe that Corey hadn't noticed anything unusual about his colleague father. Public opinion split into two factions, one expressing sympathy, seeing Corey as a victim, and the other criticizing him for possibly knowing but staying silent for personal gain. In his only public appearance after the incident, Corey briefly told the cameras, "I didn't know. If I had known, I wouldn't be here today. I'm his son, not his accomplice." But his words did little to quell the wave of doubt. Some internet users dug up old interviews, analyzed clips from the show, and searched for clues in Rick's behavior that Corey might have noticed. No one could say for sure, but it was clear that Corey's image as a loyal heir had now been tarnished by suspicion. The shock for the production team didn't just stem from the crimes, but from the realization that they had spent over a decade filming and interacting with a killer without anyone suspecting a thing. According to an anonymous production assistant interviewed by Hollywood Reporter, Rick had always controlled all backstage activities, from script editing to filming schedules. He was never overly friendly, but he was always on time, professional, and never lost his composure. Looking back, that calmness was truly the most terrifying part. When the scandal broke, History Channel had no choice but to cancel the show permanently. Despite Pawn Stars being one of the longest-running and most profitable brands for the channel, advertising contracts, international distribution rights, and even store tour contracts were all terminated within 10 days. Many longtime crew members who had been with the show from the start found themselves suddenly unemployed. "I feel like I helped create a media monster," admitted one cameraman. "The gold and silver pawn shop truly became a trap." The Life Store, once a major tourist attraction in Las Vegas, was also closed indefinitely. The building was sealed off for investigation, and tourists completely avoided the place. Those who had once visited to buy a small piece of jewelry and perhaps meet Rick Harrison in person now wanted to forget they had ever stepped foot there. Rick's family was shattered. His wife, who occasionally appeared in behind-the-scenes footage, disappeared from public view and was believed to have left Nevada. The children remained silent completely. According to some sources, they were cooperating with investigators to identify which family assets were obtained through illegal activities, a necessary step to avoid criminal liability. In late March 2025, Rick Harrison was officially charged with 29 counts, including first-degree murder, operating an organized crime syndicate, smuggling antiquities, money laundering, and obstructing law enforcement. The prosecution process was expedited after nearly 3 months of investigation, involving over 70 federal agents and criminal experts. By this point, there was no doubt that Rick Harrison was the key figure in a series of organized murders carried out within his own mansion, where the FBI discovered 25 bodies carefully hidden, turning the land into a cold museum of death. The first trial opened its doors on September 18, 2024, at the federal court in Nevada, under strict security and intense international media scrutiny. The press called this the trial of the century for reality television. More than 200 journalists were allowed to report live from outside the courthouse. CNN, NBC, and CBS provided daily analysis with coverage dissecting every detail of the proceedings. Never before had a reality TV star in the U.S. faced such a massive amount of accusations and overwhelming evidence. Nevada's chief prosecutor, Maria Lopez, began with a chilling statement. Defendant Rick Harrison is not just a murderer. He has built a criminal empire. Every brick in his mansion is laid with the blood and bones of victims. The prosecution's case was built on 3 main pillars: physical evidence from the crime scene, the victim's remains, journals and personal items, electronic data including encrypted messages, secret recordings, internal surveillance, witness testimony from individuals who had exchanged artifacts with Rick or had been threatened by him. A shocking detail was revealed in court, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. A video showed Rick Harrison standing in the library of his mansion in front of one of his trophy display cabinets. In the video, he touches a necklace, which was later identified as belonging to victim Valerie Chen. The footage is devoid of any words from Rick, but the way he stares at the object with a calm, cold, and emotionless gaze made the jury shudder. The stillness in his actions was a chilling reminder that Rick's cruelty was not a spur-of-the-moment reaction, but a part of his deeply ingrained nature, carefully planned and calculated. That gaze was not just an evaluation of an object, but a clear display of the control and power he constantly sought to maintain. The defense, led by the famous attorney Peter O'Donnell, used a dual strategy, denying the murder charges and questioning the legality of the investigation. They argued that most of the evidence might have been fabricated and that Rick Harrison was the victim of a conspiracy designed to ruin his reputation and wealth. O'Donnell repeatedly referred to the case as a media trial, criticizing how the public and the press had convicted Rick before he had a chance to defend himself. However, these arguments were unable to dismiss the massive amount of evidence that was steadily mounting against him. The defense changed tactics, suggesting that Rick might have been suffering from dissociative personality disorder or unresolved psychological trauma. They argued that his actions could have been the result of an unstable mental condition. However, medical records and psychological evaluations conducted by the FBI completely rejected this claim. Rick was found to be fully aware of his actions, with no history of mental illness. Psychological experts concluded that he was mentally competent to stand trial and fully capable of understanding and taking responsibility for what he had done. The climax of the trial came when Rick Harrison was allowed to represent himself in court. A surprising decision. For nearly 40 minutes, he maintained eye contact, speaking in a flat tone and denying all murder accusations. He declared, "I am a businessman. I deal in antiques. I am not a murderer. Everything you say about me, about the mansion, about the bodies, is fabricated or part of a setup." However, his denial only further alienated the jury. His complete lack of remorse and his total detachment from the reality of his crimes, completely contrary to the overwhelming evidence uncovered during witness testimonies at the house, only tightened the legal noose around him. A former employee testified that Rick had threatened him for knowing too much about the company's secrets and Rick's unethical actions. An auction expert admitted to being paid to falsify the provenance of the artifacts Rick had sold, enabling illegal transactions. A journalist who had worked with Valerie Chen also confirmed that Valerie expressed concerns about her safety after investigating Rick. She even shared her fear of what could happen after exposing these secrets. Just weeks later, Valerie went missing, raising suspicions about Rick's involvement. These testimonies not only provided crucial details, but also revealed the dangerous relationship between Rick and those around him. Finally, after nearly 7 weeks of litigation and over 80 court sessions, the 12-member jury unanimously delivered the verdict. Rick Harrison was guilty of first-degree murder for all 25 confirmed victims, along with charges related to trafficking, money laundering, and running a transnational crime syndicate. The sentence was life in prison without parole. The court also ordered the confiscation of all Rick's assets, including his mansion, gold and silver pawn shop, international bank accounts, and his multi-million-dollar artifact collection. When Rick was escorted out of the courtroom, he did not look back. He walked as if resigned to his fate, not like someone betrayed, but as someone with secrets fully exposed. With an emotionless expression, he disappeared behind the steel doors, carrying with him a past that America wanted to forget, but would never forget. Rick Harrison, from a national TV icon, became a multiple offender, a serial killer, and the mastermind behind an international antiquities trafficking network. He not only brought about his own downfall, but also left behind a dark legacy for reality TV, and more broadly, for the public's perception of truth and trust. The trial has ended, the verdict has been delivered, but the cracks left by Rick Harrison's case in the fabric of American society remain in academic forums, media conferences, and journalism classrooms. The name Rick Harrison has now become a textbook example of the double-sided nature of public image, a clear reminder of the failure of both the public and the reality TV industry to look beyond the shiny surface. What do you think of this case? Which part of it gave you the chills? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more stories, even more chilling than fiction, because the truth is sometimes scarier than imagination. See you in the next one.